Hey everybody, it's Phil here, Pleasure Bound Leather. I'm gonna do a quick little video showing little tips on sturdying something up. If you got a piece of gear it's not too sturdy. Basically what happened was, at the event I was at this weekend, a friend of mine had this belt she had gotten. It was a real cheap belt. She paid like $20 off of it, and it had some of these style triangle circle deals, and this was the basic setup for it. It was in sections like this. Then there would be some studs here, and she paid like $20. It was like, the small strap here, it was about yay long, each of them. There's a series of them. It wasn't even really real leather and stuff like that, but she got it real cheap. It was more for show than anything else. But at the event, from here, she was trying to hang a couple floggers, and that was pulling on this real bad, and this part was wanting to turn. What I've got set up here was actually sturdier than the belt. Of course, the belt was also a bit broken in and such. So what I was going to do for her, simply because I had the stuff on hand, was punch some holes and just thread it up on the one side. That would have sturdied it up and turned basically a costume piece into not really so much a very functional but useful for what she was needing it piece. What ended up happening is, it was noticed this during setup, grabbed it, finished setting up, was a real busy night, and I forgot all about it, forgot to do it. Now her husband does a bit of leather work too. Not quite the same stuff I do. He does a lot of floggers, which we both do, but his style is different than mine, and he does a lot of furniture type stuff. St. Andrew's crosses, some spanking benches, things like that. Does great work, and he is, I only offered to do it because I had with me on hand what I needed to actually do it. When I realized I'd forgotten stuff, it was a matter of, just let him know what he was going to do. Didn't get a chance to do that, so instead of sending him a message or giving him a call or whatever, explain to it, I figured this was a good time to just do a quick little video so that I can demonstrate for anybody who comes across it, who's I get a lot of people who buy a costume piece for cosplay or whatever, and decide they want more out of it. They'll come to me to kind of sturdy it up a little bit for them, and so I'm going to kind of put this out there. Setup on it, is riveted like this, which is not how I like to do things. If I was making a piece like this, I'd have 4 rivets here, boom, boom, boom. But with it being a $20 piece, they're going to do things like skimp on pieces like that and a little weaker material, simply because that's where the price point is. So what I was going to do is, I was going to take this here, get these places like Tandy Leather, all sorts of various hobby shops and stuff, and punch a few holes, punch it all the way through. And I had this with me. I was just going to set it on the floor and do it. I'm not really being too worried about perfectly lining it up here. You can I'm still angled enough. You can do it to how you want it. But basically this, you run it along and you get your keep everything nice and uniform. You also got your single ones, and you can get various lengths. These punch through a lot easier, just a single one, but you got to mark your distances, keep it uniform. If you don't want to buy something like these, you can get just a regular scratch awl or something like that, and punch through. Now these, sometimes you'll need to go both sides, from each side to get the amount of space. But as you see, this will work just fine. Now you got to make sure you've got something underneath that you can punch into without damaging your equipment. This here's a soul bin, nice sturdy piece. I use it for all sorts of crap. Go one more. There. Now I got my holes punched. What I recommend is picking you up one of these. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's nice. You put a little spool in there. You can take the needle out, swap needles, sing on screws. There's supposed to be a tool that goes in there, but it's in my briefcase somewhere. And these are actually, like, if you do a lot of camping, hiking and stuff, getting one of these, because like I said, this will all fit in the handle. So that way if you've got some gear you need to repair, it comes with waxed thread, so it won't, get wet, it won't rot on you or anything. And there's a lot you can repair with just this and something to punch a hole with. Now what you can do is, you got to do at least twice, just for ease of use. The distance, pull it out. I go a little bit further just because I like to throw a couple extra ones on. And you got your length, you pull it out top, come down, poke it in the next hole, then you drop it down a little bit, and that'll make a little opening, feed this through. What that does is it'll make those two threads lock in on each other. I believe this may be actually called a locking stitch. I don't know. These are quite sturdy. This will do you real nice. What you gotta do is you gotta make sure that the side you're feeding through is not the side that's feeding up the groove. There's a little groove in the needle. Make sure you are not, if you put the top thread through there, it'll jam up on you. There. Now what I like to do is when I get to the end, just like you would with like a machine or whatnot, I like to double back and do one or two through the holes we've already hit. And depending on how much use you want out of it, you may want to go through the whole thing a second, third time. Just as you're doing it, it starts getting tight in there. Once you get your second one in. Now from here, you can either just obviously cut it, but you can either just cut it flat, or if it's not something you need to look super pretty, you can pull it through. And I probably should have left more room and tie you a knot and trim it down. Didn't quite leave myself enough room to work with, but you get the idea there. Now, if you don't want to pick up one of these, if it's going to be a one-time thing, spending money on any actual equipment might not be, in your best interest. But scratch off something like that, these aren't too expensive, and they're useful for all sorts of shit. So if you don't want to do that, you can just get, this is artificial sinew, it doesn't have to be that. Just some nice heavier duty thread. A waxed thread is always nice. And another thing that can work for you real well is, believe it or not, dental floss. Dental floss is basically a waxed thread. I'll get the non-flavored stuff. And it's got pretty decent tension strength for what it is, or what we normally think of it. And this you can stitch and I normally don't use a hook needle for this, it's just I couldn't find my other regular needles. But you can either use single needle, like I'm going to here, or you can do a double needle. There's plenty of videos on specifically doing that. But I'm not going to do that here. What I'm going to do is basically do the same thing I did with that other tool. Just, you can just use a standard needle for that. Pull it in. And how nice and fancy you want this to look all depends on what exactly you've got going on. Is this just something that you just need some extra strength on? Is this a piece that's going to be visible? Is this piece of costume gear needs to hold a little bit more weight than what it was meant for? Whatnot. And actually, you can, depending on the materials being used, if you're talking real leather, this stuff here is 6-7 ounce veg tan. If you got some sturdy materials, some sturdy leather, some veg tan or latigo, and it just wasn't assembled, built as sturdy as you hoped, this is a good way to take an otherwise not so functional piece and add some decent functionality to it. Especially if you're using this artificial sinew or the wax thread that comes on something like, that for designed for something like that, because that's pretty strong stuff. And in that situation, I'll do a few more, but it'll hold quite nicely. And then you can take an otherwise not so functioning piece and put it into a functional piece. And here's where it starts getting a little, get a bit of wax on there and a bit of room inside those knots. This is what I was talking about before, where it'll start to get a little tight. Now, a little bit of working. Careful with that though, because I've broken a number of needles in an area that's binding up, because I've got a lot in there. Now you can, just like with a sewing machine or whatnot, just clip it tight next to it, as long as you do some decent backtracking. Now, this is what I had planned. Of course, I would have done it a lot neater, straighter, and such. Maybe a little bit closer to the edge. So now, when it pulls down, it's not pulling on some centered rivets. Got tension here that's adding a lot of stability. So that would have been a much functional piece for her. Now, this is well within his skill set. I'm not naming names because I didn't talk to him about this video beforehand. He does great work. It's well within his capabilities. Just something neither one of them thought of. I brought it up because I could see it, and I had on hand, whenever I go to do an event, I always bring a briefcase full of crap with me. So it was something I was able to do right then if I had remembered to do it. So, especially for you cosplayers trying to get some cheap stuff, want to get a little bit more work out of it, or somebody who, you know, when you order online, sometimes you don't exactly get what you were expecting. Sometimes things aren't what you thought you were getting out of it. This here is a nice way to go ahead and tighten it up until you can either replace it or, you know, if it works, it works and you're good to go. Alright, you guys got any questions? Shoot me a line. You need anything, you know, shoot me a line. You guys take care of each other. Remember, life's beautiful, motherfuckers. Go out and live it.